Greetings everyone, hey, thank you for joining me. This is a video or presentation or update regarding the coronavirus, the COVID-19, the SARS coronavirus, which they've now changed the name to, just to give you all a little insight, information, ideas, concepts, and looking into the future of where we're headed. So this could be a bit muddled and it could go all over the place. It could go on for quite some time. But with that, let's just get into a starting point. So these 6 cards here in front of you are basically the type of energies that we all should be surrounding ourselves with at this time. Positivity and compassion, good vibrancy, power, strength, balance, the throat chakra being open, being activated, being looked after, divine healing coming in, the energy of love as well. However, there is obviously a lot of fear and panic on the planet, understandably, and that we're humans. We're here as spiritual beings in a human body living a human experience, and part of those experiences involve the gauntlet of things such as emotions. All of us have the same basic fundamental emotions as each other, and in those emotions are a range of things such as happiness, love, joy, but also we can exhibit and hold on to fear, anxiety, depression, worry. Now the collective seem to have got together at this point, the collective conscious energies, and we've harnessed a great deal of fear and anxiety. Now a lot of this stems from, of course, what we're seeing in the papers, what we're reading and what we're hearing. So it's not all to blame. We can't be held entirely to blame, because a lot of information is either filtered directly to us or filtered away from us. They're not necessarily reporting enough about the recovery of people, the number of people who aren't being infected by this coronavirus, the other issues that are going on the planet, the other illnesses that still exist, that have always existed, that have killed many, many more people, but we don't tend to worry about them the same. And a lot of them have been as infectious or as dangerous or just as many negative repercussions. So what we need to do is look into the fact that life is cyclical, that all things come about and they eventually balance each other out. We know that this year of 2020 started off with a very karmic energy, with this Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction, which held a lot of karma. Now karmic issues go back over lifetimes, and they don't just do it for the individual, they do it for the collective, they do it for the planet, they do it for the cosmos, for the universe. Karmic is a spiritual perspective, if you like, of energetic threads that have happened over the past time. We must have been able to look into this at a deeper level and know that karma and karmic type energies and issues were going to be playing out for so many people globally that we've probably overlooked the fact that this could very well be one of them. If we think about pandemics, which this has now been officially designated, the pandemic status, pandemics global come and go roughly every 100 years. We were actually due for another pandemic anyhow. You know, in real terms, any kind of event could come and shake us up at any time. So being prepared, knowing how to deal with situations, having emergency plans in place, having global emergency plans in place, these actually all become very important strategies in dealing with the swift decline of global issues. And at the moment, we're moving fairly quickly globally to stomp this thing out. I'm going to pull up some information shortly for you and read it out to you. There's some really interesting connections with the pandemics back in the 1900s, the early 1900s, 1918, and it'll be interesting for you to hear this information. Now, there's another dynamic or aspect that's been coming to my mind a lot, and I want to say it because I feel that this is a thread of energy that is out there, that exists. We have the opportunity to experience many different timelines. We can be traversing down one timeline, and if collectively enough energy transposes us, we can alter into another timeline which shifts an event or an outcome. Most people that are living currently on the earth, unless you're very, very elderly, but if you're just average age, mid-age to younger, none of us have really experienced a massive, global, life-threatening pandemic or event. However, every generation or series of generations generally does. For instance, my parents endured World War II, which went on for 7 years. Now, whilst they lived in New Zealand, for all the people that lived in places around Europe, for 7 years their lives were sheer hell and misery. Bombing every day, no food, no jobs, no money, no travel, no decent health, nothing. But they survived. So in real terms, this pandemic for us is actually a lucky break. Now I feel, and there's been talk about this, if you look back over people who do predictions, people on YouTube, not just myself, but other astrologers or psychics, oftentimes they had predicted this energy of war, of potential global war. It was in the background. You could feel into the thread of it. Now, it was extremely prominent around the late 2018-19 energy. And a lot of people were saying there was this feeling of the potential of a global war. Well, I firmly believe that was a high possibility. Now, something happened in the timeline to slightly alter that outcome. We veered off that timeline of a potential Third World War, and it could very well have been between America and North Korea. Kim Jong-un was rapidly building his artillery with nuclear warheads. He was getting feisty. There were tensions between America and North Korea. We also have other possibilities such as Russia coming in on the scene, China coming in on the scene, and Iran. Now, a lot of that has been diffused one way or another, and actually Donald Trump has played a role in that diffusing. Now, I'm not going into this politically at any level. I have nothing to do with American politics, so I'm not saying whether I favour him or not. Some of his decisions, I think, have helped to alter potential timelines. So if we have moved ourselves or juxtapositioned off a timeline of a World War III event, in reality, we have moved ourselves sideways, so we've had a side swipe. So we've moved into another parallel timeline that has had a similar energy field around it. And what is the energy field? Boom! It's this. It's a global lockdown. It's mass fear and panic. There are deaths, and it is global. However, for now, and especially if we can get this vaccine under control, and at the moment, again, America have put the first patients into testing with a vaccine taken from the cellular debris, if you like, or the cellular DNA of the actual virus. So I think there might be over 40 people who are being injected with this vaccine for a period of 8 weeks, several sets of injections that they will be having. and this is the trial phase. There is also in Australia some doctors who have found that antiviral treatment, namely HIV antiviral treatment, has been very, very effective in treating patients with COVID-19 or coronavirus or the SARS-CoV-2 or whatever they're calling it. So we're seeing already incredible increments of knowledge coming out and adaptability and ways of harnessing this viral outbreak. But if we look at the potentiality of, did you want perhaps a World War III, or did you want this, if those were our only choices? This was the better option, and I feel this is where we have juxtapositioned ourselves into. A World War III at a nuclear level, you have no idea how bad that was going to be. No idea. If you want a glimpse, check out the Netflix series, or maybe it's not Netflix, it might be some other channel that's doing it about Chernobyl. Check out that. Go through and watch that Chernobyl series. That will give you an idea of the Holocaust we could have been heading into with the potentiality of nuclear war. This planet can't take that. So I feel that there has been a diversion at a higher galactic, interplanetary, energetic level that has juxtapositioned us to here. So if this is where we are for now, we have to deal with it. We have to analyze it. We have to be strong. We have to take logical, proactive steps in getting this to its final point as quick as viably possible. Now, one of the main aspects that I also pick up from this is that we are going to learn unbelievable jumps along the way. We're going to almost fundamentally alter the way we structure current life. Now, I don't know about where you live specifically, but here in New Zealand over the weekend, the government shut our borders down and said that anyone who comes in must self-isolate for 14 days. We've had a couple of visitors who have come in and flouted this and said, no, I can't be bothered, I want my holiday. So they've been tracked down and they're being deported. So the government are quite serious about the fact that you must come into our country, lock yourself in your accommodation for 14 days and not leave it. For most of the rest of us, we have really quietened down. A lot of New Zealand companies are looking at ways of getting their workers to work from home. Admittingly, there's the frontliners that can't do this. So they are fundamentally at the moment supermarket workers. I have 2 sons that work in the supermarket industry. So they're the heroes at the moment. Keeping our shops stocked and food available for everyone, and they go to work every day working hard to try and keep up, because believe me, demand is high. However, we're not necessarily panic buying. The shelves are looking a little bit empty, but the idea here with buying some stocks for yourself is to do it occasionally rather than one lump buy, because the supermarkets are constantly getting deliveries. They can handle a little bit of extra clientele coming in every day and buying a little bit more every day, because they'll get a delivery again the following day, and the workers will put the stock out and it'll be back on the shelf. What they can't handle is when every man and his dog turn up wanting 60 packets of toilet paper, and of course it runs out. Now, while I'm on this, because I am digressing and I know I'm losing the continuity flow here, but so be it, that's how we're going. The toilet paper gaffe has become the butt of many jokes, pardon the pun. So everyone's asking and everyone's saying, what is all this going on about the toilet paper? Why is everybody buying, masses and masses of this toilet paper? Number one, it's a wee bit hard to find somewhere to stock it all because it's such a voluminous item. Well, I read an article and I can't find it now. I did want to find it so I could actually read it out to you because it is quite an in-depth article. Somebody asked a psychologist, what's going on? Why is everyone rushing to buy toilet paper of all things? Wouldn't it be better if they had food in their pantry to feed themselves? Or, painkillers or soap to keep themselves clean? The reason is, apparently from this article that I read, when we feel in fear or panic, we lose control, right? And there are many different situations where you can lose control, and it's not a nice feeling. Like, for instance, I have a fear of flying, and when I'm on an aeroplane, I'm not in control. I can't see if the engines are working or if the pilot's doing his job properly or if the wheels are coming down when it's coming to land. I can't see any of that, so I feel that I've lost my control. And it's an unpleasant feeling. So this pandemic that's come on, which has created the collective energy of fear for a lot of people, during this need to gain control back of all things, having control over your personal cleanliness gives you that feeling of safety. And the toilet paper clearly is a large aspect of your personal safety. So this is why when you see people hoarding toilet paper, they actually have more fear surrounding the whole scenario. They're more afraid. They're in a deep state of anxiety. So that may help you to understand when you see it happening in real life, if it comes to your town or if you've experienced it, that person themselves is very out of balance. They're very fearful. They're full of deep anxiety. Once they get all that toilet paper home and stash it all up, I'm not sure if that gives them any comfort or not. Oftentimes anxiety is free-flowing and it will move on to another subject matter. But coming back to the matter of shopping, for all of us, we need to show compassion, logic, intelligence, understanding, and kindness and love. There have been many photos online where there have been especially elderly folk who, they can't rush to the shops and charge down an aisle and bowl people over and scrummage them to the floor to get a packet of toilet paper. So they're often missing out. And they're wandering up and down shop shelves looking for a few of the little treats and things that they probably want or need, and they're missing out. So for all of us, it's a very good, timely reminder to be kind. And if you see someone who really needs something and they've got nothing in their trolley, and they might be elderly or disabled or a pregnant woman or a mother with children, then try and offer some support or help one way or another, especially if your trolley is overflowing and you have ample. From my understanding of my two sons who work in the supermarket industry, especially here in New Zealand, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but we make toilet paper in New Zealand. It's made every day, so it's not a problem. It will be in stock for us, and probably most of the world is in a similar situation. We also do have good stocks of food within the country and other requirements. So panic buying is not assisting anyone. In fact, if anything, it's probably making your local supermarket owner richer and richer, when you could be spending some of your money or income slightly more wisely and spreading it around to some of the other businesses who might clearly need it. So what else have I written down here? We're talking about clearly this pandemic is not just a health pandemic. It is a financial, global pandemic as well. We have seen global depressions or recessions in the past. There have been many of them. We do pull out of them. It does take time. It does look as though we are heading into another one. I suspect this is going to go on yet for some time. There isn't a magic bullet to finally hit this on the head and make it go away overnight, as if we're in a bad dream and we could wake up and it's all gone. So again, this is about logic, it's about calm, and it's about carry on. The share market fall of the 1987 and the 2008s, if we recall, the worst thing is people selling out. And the silliest thing is to sell out when the prices are so low, because you've lost half of your investment. So if you have money in the share market or other businesses, it's better now to leave it be. Everything will come back round. The shares will come back up. And there's actually some amazing opportunities to buy low. Warren Buffett, one of the world's richest men, has only ever bought shares on a down market or a bear market or when they're really low. So there technically are so many opportunities out there right now for people who have the money to be buying shares at a really low price and to make some good investments and some good money. So from every event, there is always positivity. There is always learning. There is always an end to it. From every event, we create history, and we're always moving forward. When we have time to look back at this year of 2020, and if you listen to my year predictions, I start off saying this is the tipping point year. It is the year of non-balance. That's how I started my whole fundamental prediction. I could tell that everything was out of kilter, that we were tipping something up and out. But when we look back in the future, we will mark this era as an amazing turning point for humankind. We are leaping into the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is about intellectual technology and information. We are going to learn huge amounts of change and direction, and I think especially about how we work, about health in particular, about human dynamics, and about our global connection, about how to treat each other, and about how quickly these things can move and how quickly we can get on top of them and stop them with correct, intelligent decision making. There's a really cool saying: viruses are contagious, but so too is panic, fear, hysteria, calm, grace, empathy, love, and kindness. Choose wisely which one you will spread. So it's important to remember that every eventuum has an activation and an outcome. And our outcome with this coronavirus is yet to be established. We don't know time-wise where it is. It's not any time soon. It's going to go on for at least a couple of more months at the physical viral end, but then we have the financial things to sort out globally. There's one other aspect I'd really like us to look at and to consider and to be aware of. I think most of you who follow my work and my channel would understand that I am very connected to Earth, to Gaia, to the planet, and to the animals, the living kingdom, the peaceful beings, as well as people, obviously. We have been trundling headlong into a massive climate change nuclear fusion. Now this is another potential timeline shift that is occurring. So while I mentioned earlier about the timeline shift from a potential World War III into jumping into this one, which is the virus pandemic event, there's also another event that we are jumping into or merging with, And this is for the planet. This is for the future generation of our humanity. This is for our kids' kids. This is for our great-great-grandchildren. We were close to the tipping point at the beginning of this year regards the temperature this planet was getting to. We were overheating rapidly. Now, it's been on my mind for so long that we needed to reduce air travel, because air travel is one of the heaviest pollutants. And the worst thing is, it's up in the air, the atmosphere, trapping the heat from escaping. So air travel has been, as it grew and grew and grew rapidly, has been one of the biggest issues of CO2 rising and creating the warming temperatures. Now suddenly, boom, overnight, we have a reduction of around 80 to 90% of air travel. The reduction for this planet for air pollution and CO2 emissions at the moment is massive. I don't think anyone's had the chance to fully calculate it, but we can pretty much assume it's somewhere around the 70% mark. That is going to enable the planet time to breathe. She's taking a gulp of fresh air. She's refueling herself because we have stopped. Literally. All of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis which create emissions, it's stopped. Yes, we're suffering temporarily. We're also temporarily going to learn and change. But the planet, she's like having the best holiday of her life. We live on this planet. We don't have plan B, and we don't have another planet to go to. We were getting close to the tipping point of non-reversal. It was going to be literally by the end of this year or early next year, this time next year, I feel we were not going to be able to reverse the damage that we'd done. We were too close. But suddenly, out of nowhere, we get this event. Now, at the moment, no one's thinking of this yet. They haven't grasped the depth and the breadth of this accumulation of change that's taking place at this very, very big level. Yes, it's going to have a deep financial impact. I understand all that. But overall, for the long term of the ability for us all to live on this planet, it is going to be beneficial. And it's that simple. Now, if we come back to some of the articles I wanted to show you, I want to read a couple of these articles out for you. Then I will pull a couple of cards at the end to see if we can get a timeline for when we think the virus will be more under control. So I'm going to swing my camera around to the computer so that you guys get a different perspective and you can read what I'm going to show you as well. In fact, I've just had a really good example of how collective conscious works. I've been sitting in here doing this reading, and of course there's a lot of energetic feel behind it of the panic and the anxiety that, you know, when I work, I'm tapping into the collective. So all of a sudden, Ella, one of my cats, runs in here with a baby rat, screaming its head off. The rat gets loose in the house and it's screaming, it's running around screaming. So we eventually caught the rat and got it outside. I think it didn't stop screaming the whole time. And then my dog, poor Stevie, went to go to the toilet and got a whole lot of poo all stuck on her, and she was in panic as well. So all this panic ensued while I was talking about the essence and the energy of it. So I'll be pleased when this video is done and finished, because that's the type of vibration that can be picked up, and that's why I always talk about the collective thread and the energy from within. Anyhow, what I was trying to do for you all was give you some positives or some insight or some accuracy around the virus and perhaps where it's going, as well as maybe some spiritual or psychic insight as well. This article came out, I think it's from the Washington Post by the looks, and it's why outbreaks like coronavirus spread exponentially and how to flatten the curve. So there are ways we can do this at the individual, and the most likely event is by self-isolating to a degree. So having companies help their employees work from home is a massive start to helping the curve flatten out. And once it flattens, it will diminish. And that's the point that we're trying to get to now. So why outbreaks like coronavirus spread exponentially and how to flatten the curve. After the first case of COVID-19, the disease caused by the new strain of coronavirus was announced in the United States, reports of further infections trickled in slowly. 2 months later, that trickle has turned into a steady current, and that graph shows you that. This is so-called exponential curve, has experts worried. If the number of cases were to continue to double every 3 days, there would be about 100 million cases in the United States by May. That is math, not prophecy. The spread can be slowed, public health professionals say, if people practice social distancing by avoiding public spaces and generally limiting their movement. Now, I think globally we're seeing this, and I think we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in the spread. Still, without any measures to slow it down, COVID-19 will continue to spread exponentially for months. To understand why, it's instructive to simulate the spread of a fake disease through a population. So they show a few simulations as we go down on these pages. So I will click here. This is a healthy person comes into contact with a sick person. The healthy person becomes sick too and passes it on to 5 people. And it doesn't take long for that infection to spread. In real life, people eventually recover. A recovered person can neither transmit to a healthy person nor become sick again after coming in contact with a sick person, and that's how that pattern looks. If we move down a little bit more, they have other simulations, and it says let's see what happens when the simulus spreads in a town of 200 people. We'll start everyone in town at a random position, moving at a random angle, and we will make one person sick. Notice how the slope of the red curve, which represents the number of sick people, rises rapidly as the disease spreads and then tapers off as people recover. So this is, you are now seeing on the screen, this is how infection just spreads, and this is how it gets to other people. This is why self-isolation and retaining social boundaries and restrictions from others will help to prevent the spread of this disease. So there we see now everyone is in a recovering mode. That was a small town about the size of Whittier, Alaska. So it was able to spread quickly across an entire population. In a country like the United States with 330 million people, the curve could steepen for a long time before it has started to slow. When it comes to the real COVID-19, we would prefer to slow the spread of virus before it infects a large portion of the US. And of course, this is an example for US people. To slow it, let's try to create a forced quarantine, such as the one the Chinese government imposed on Hubei province. Now we'll start this one, and these are the forced quarantine over this side. So you watch what happens. The quarantine area generally over time seems to open up, even allowing 1 or 2 to flow out. But you see how the curve has been flattened and more people recovered, which can't then be infected or reinfected, which helps to stabilize the overall population. So it says, as health experts would expect, it's proved impossible to completely seal off the sick population from the healthy. Then they have a final one, which is let's see what happens when a quarter of our population continues to move around while the other 3/4 adopt a strategy of what health experts call social distancing. It looks like it's already self-started. So it's a much slower infection rate. You see a lot more recovered people. You even see some people who never actually get the virus. That is what they are trying to do globally at the moment, asking everyone to socially self-distant. It could work. We've certainly seen in places such as China, South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, who have been very stringent on their population and enforced quarantine. They are nearly down now at no cases of the virus every day. So this one here is the more social distancing keeps even more people healthy, and people can be nudged away from public places by removing the allure of that. We control the desire to be in public spaces by closing down public spaces. For example, closing restaurants. China is closing everything, and America are closing things too. So this reduces the allure for people to get there. To stimulate more social distancing, instead of allowing a quarter of the population to move, we'll see what happens when we just let 1 out of every 8 people move around. So here's another example for you to see. It's quite fascinating to watch. These are actually mathematically designed graphs that you're looking at, so they're not done by humans, and every time you click on the graph it will operate in a different manner because it's random. So see how that curve there pretty much doesn't exist. So we have the ability and the intelligence and the information to know how to slow the virus down, and once we get a vaccine in place, then we will be able to see a complete change. So there are the 4 different curves, and what we're aiming for is the curve on the right, which is extensive distancing. Now, of course, there's much talk about quarantining and the effect it has on mental health. So this too will be an area that we have to extrapolate out and we have to work with, as well as keeping people at home, shutting things down and dealing with the financial crisis. But as I say, I still think this is probably a better timeline than some of the others that we could have had. Now, this is a very interesting article that came out from Lou Rockwell, and again, this I think is an American article. But here's a bullet point summary of the COVID-19 and how it started. So I might just make that bigger for you all so you can read it. COVID-19 coronavirus is as much an ecological disaster as a medical one. Initially, it appears to be a unique experience centered in Wuhan, China. It emanates from an environment of incinerated pig waste, airborne particles, and low vitamin D blood levels in winter, and weakened immune systems, particularly among smokers, drinkers, and the elderly. It is believed both the Spanish flu of 1918 and the COVID-19 coronavirus began as zoonotic infections, not from bats as first reported in the Wuhan COVID-19 outbreak, but rather from pigs and pig waste. The 1918 Spanish flu pandemic began in the midst of an infectious pig slaughter of undiscovered cause, a few hundred miles from Camp Funston, what is Fort Riley today. Similarly, the outbreak of the COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak began in the Wuhan, China area in the wake of a massive kill-off of pigs who are currently dying from African swine flu. Viral outbreaks arise in winter, but so does tuberculosis. Some types of mycobacteria do not have cell walls and can mimic the appearance of a virus under the microscope. Antibiotics cannot be used for viruses. If a virus, then why aren't antiviral drugs working but antibiotics are? Now you see, this was released a while ago, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We are now seeing, of course, in Australia, the antiviral drugs seem to be having an impact on the virus. However, there's another point that seems to have gone into underground. China found 2 strains of the virus. One they called L and one they called S. Now these strains are quite different from each other. One is more severe than the other as well. So there's a possibility that some people are getting the more severe form and others are getting the lesser severe. Certainly the 11 cases we have in New Zealand at the moment. Only one person required hospitalisation. The other 10 have been at home and say they have had very limited illness or symptoms. Coming back to here, COVID-19 coronavirus may be just a passenger virus, not the primary microbial organism that kills by filling the lower lungs with fluid. Both the current Wuhan COVID-19 coronavirus and tubercular mycobacteria do not tend to infect or cause serious disease in young children, roughly between 5 and 12 years of age. It is projected that the COVID-19 coronavirus will peak worldwide in March and then return in a second but lesser peak in September, in accordance with Yang's Wuhan study from 2004 to 13. Describing the annual TB surges in Wuhan, China. Saying the spread of the COVID-19 coronavirus is inevitable, a CDC, Centers for Disease Control official, advised Americans brace themselves and prepare to shut down public schools, avoid going to church, and self-quarantine their families. These onerous measures are for a virus that has infected just 53 Americans, mostly among people who travelled recently to China. Recognising the possibility that some officials within the CDC are potential handmaidens to the drug and vaccine industry that would benefit from such scare tactics, President Trump decided to issue all government statements about COVID-19 from the White House. After all, the CDC seemed to be about ready to bring down the entire US economy and shutter small businesses that would never recover from even a short quarantine. Now, as it so happens, we have now moved into that space anyhow. But this is quite interesting to read because there is definitely a conjunction in here with the tuberculum virus and the way it, or the mycobacterium, the way it is acting, as well as the coronavirus. Doomsday virus, irresponsible and implausible predictions that COVID-19 could produce symptomatic viral infection in 60% of the world's population, with 45 million deaths, fueled by sensationalized news reports, were purely unfounded and certainly premature. Aeroplanes facilitate its geographical spread, but person-to-person transmission remains static. Immune status may be a controlling factor in person-to-person transmission. Maybe just a passenger virus. But what is the sense in panicking the world over a coronavirus that is 3 times less deadly than the SARS outbreak? And mind you, it has still not been proved that COVID-19 is anything more than a non-symptomatic, non-pathogenic passenger virus being picked up diagnostically, but not the primary underlying cause responsible for the pandemic or epidemic itself. In fact, there is a direct and indirect evidence that COVID-19 is not from a virus at all. The SARS coronavirus, often compared with the new COVID-19, was present only in about half of the SARS cases, and antivirals such as ribavirin and oseltamivir, Tamiflu, were not working in SARS culture plates, nor were they effective in clinics or hospitals. That passenger viruses do exist has been abundantly documented, as when the HTLV1 virus, the human T-cell leukemia virus, was mistakenly attributed to being caused for AIDS. And so the question which never went away looms: are the coronaviruses merely traveller viruses from a yet-to-be-determined primary stealth cause? One recent news headline said scientists claim antibiotics already on the market could treat coronavirus. Despite warnings from CDC and World Health Organization that antibiotics do nothing against viruses, overusing them fuels resistant microbes. Fact of the matter is that antiviral medicines were not found to provide benefit in either the SARS or MERS strains of coronavirus either, which broke out in 2002 and 2012. Yet this habit of administering antivirals was stubbornly clung to in the treatment of the 138 coronavirus-infected patients hospitalized in Wuhan, China, described in Wang's et al.'s recently published JAMA study. On the other hand, all of these 138 patients and most of the 99 patients in the study received at least one antibiotic, some of which have significant antimicrobacterial as well as antibacterial activity. Mycobacteria are small rod-shaped bacteria, some varieties which have no cell wall and are difficult to distinguish from viruses. Mycobacteria cause leprosy and tuberculosis, the latter usually emanating as lower respiratory tract infection that can mimic classic pneumonia, as observed in the SARS and COVID-19 corona cases. Antibiotics have no effect against viruses, and although it is claimed that antibiotics are and were simply being used to quell secondary bacterial infections in the new pandemic, the fact is that antibiotics have proved universally to be of great help worldwide to the vast majority of novel coronavirus COVID-19 victims with or without secondary infections. Whilst experts have been telling us to wash our hands, have they really been doing the factual research needed to compare COVID-19 to, say, the Great Pandemic of 1918? During the SARS coronavirus outbreak, the Wong et al. Writing in the Journal of Chinese Medical Association warned, preoccupied with the diagnosis of SARS, in a SARS outbreak, doctors tend to overlook other endemic diseases such as tuberculosis. Perhaps Wong's warning should be listened to. The present and ongoing COVID-19 pandemic did not occur in a vacuum. By December of 2018, in a large multi-centered study, proclaimed tuberculosis to be an epidemic throughout China, which still simmers on in a country with the second largest burden of that disease in the world, a disease which also often begins with flu-like symptoms, and a disease whose bacilli are laden with RNA bacterial viruses called microbacteriophages. It was a non-virus in 1918 too. Demographers at UC Berkeley claimed tuberculosis was behind the many deaths in the 1918 Great Influenza Pandemic, and was specifically based upon the well-known concept that the secondary bacterial infections that cropped up in 1918 were common in TB-infected lungs. And in Hiroshi Nirashura's study of 2012, not only was TB shown to be associated with influenza death, but there was no influenza death among controls without TB. Investigator Nirashuri later concluded, should a highly fatal influenza pandemic occur in the future, testing the role of TB in characterizing the risk of death would be extremely useful in minimizing the disaster. But was Nirashuri being listened to and learned from? Apparently not. Fast forward, Wuhan, China, 2019-20. The chronological timetable of the present Wuhan viral pandemic suggests nothing new or novel. The coronavirus outbreak started in December 2019, first identified in Wuhan after 41 people presented with pneumonia of no clear cause. The Wuhan winter is from December to February. Yang's Wuhan study from 2004 to 13 described the annual TB surge in Wuhan as being fueled by increased transmission in the winter, peaking in March, with a second smaller peak in September. Among the conditions Yang attributed to the increased transmission of TB in the winter was indoor crowding, subsequent vitamin D deficiency, and even air pollution. The increasingly severe air pollution in Wuhan, powered by the influx of foreign companies and the increased use of incineration for waste disposal, resulted in a visible haze so thick that it reduced peripheral vision as far back as June of 2012. A haze with inhalable particulate matter, highest in the winter, which according to Yang was of a particulate size able to harbour Mycobacterium tuberculosis and related mycobacteria. And why is this important? We're getting to that. Pigs. Wuhan's economy was on fire. With it came a greatly increased demand for poultry and swine, two staples of the Chinese diet, along with the expansion of farms to raise them and the inevitable tons of waste that this brought. Even as far back as 2015, there were 5 major waste incineration plants in Wuhan, with many more scheduled to be built. That was just the beginning. By July 2018, 14 large pig breeding farms in Wuhan, with a combined annual pig production of 1.5 million pigs, pooled investments with the intent to slaughter 2 million pigs per year. China alone accounted for more than half of the world's pig population. That is, until another purported virus, the African swine fever, spread throughout China, which had no cure and a near zero survival rate for infected pigs, and which, by August 2019, virtually wiped out 40% of China's entire pig population, including those in Wuhan. Essentially, 1/4 of the world's pigs died in 1 year. And just before the latest coronavirus outbreak. China then did what it had to do and began to cull thousands of pigs to control the outbreak they claimed to be caused by the African swine fever outbreak in 2018. But how many dead animals, including those in Wuhan, were buried and how many incinerated are open questions. Burning pigs and pig excrement was a sure recipe for visible haze. The Chinese soon came up with incentive programs for livestock farmers to sell their manure to use as fertilizer, which was only marginally successful. During a study from 1953 to 68 in the UK, an astonishing 81% of pigs were found to harbour Mycobacterium avium, or fowl tuberculosis. As reported by some workers, M. avium isolates from swine represent a major threat to human beings. The similarity pre-programmed patterns of the human and porcine isolates indicates close genetic relatedness, suggesting that M. avium or fowl tuberculosis is transmitted between pigs and humans. Let's go back in time. Fort Funston, 1918, Kansas, USA. Similar events occurred at Fort Funston in Kansas circa 1918, thought by many to be the birthplace of the onset of the great influenza pandemic of 1918. It was only with the industrial development that the US tuberculosis epidemic travelled to the Midwest and Kansas, the very American Midwest where the 1918 flu pandemic of unknown origin hit in rural Haskell County, Kansas, in the midst of an infectious pig slaughter of undiscovered course, a few hundred miles from Camp Funston, today Fort Riley. It had to be more than a coincidence that by the autumn of 1918, thousands of Midwest pigs died, seemingly from the same flu-like illness and in the same Haskell County location, in which the worst human pandemic in history would kill between 50 and 100 million people was about to begin. US Inspector and veteran J.S. Cohen, for lack of another term and with no evidence other than a hunch, quickly called this unknown disease in pigs swine influenza, even as it killed pig after pig. Pigs were dying in 1918 and in 2019 and 20. That thousands of pigs died in the autumn of 1918 was problematic in that bird or fowl TB, also called avian tuberculosis or Mycobacterium avium, routinely infects birds as well as hogs and sometimes cattle, but could, under the right conditions, also infect man. So pigs had involuntarily become the living laboratory through which three of the main types of tuberculosis, human, cow and fowl, could mutate through the genetic exchange by their viral mycobacteriophages, which in the same fashion as has been attributed to the influenza and coronavirus. A bacteriophage is a virus that parasitizes a bacterium by infecting it and reproducing inside it. But insofar as 1918 was concerned, the stage was set for disaster. Airborne TB. Unknown at the time but pertinent since Kansas lies squarely in America's Dust Bowl, were the results of a previous European experiment wherein guinea pigs exposed to organisms like avian tuberculosis got little or no lung disease. However, when these mycobacteria were placed in dust aerosols with particulate matter, guinea pigs came down with progressive, fatal lung disease, not unlike what was occurring in the pandemic of 1918, as well as a prominent factor in the present Wuhan air pollution with its particulate matter haze. Burning animal waste. Fort Riley, Kansas was a sprawling establishment housing 26,000 men and encompassing an entire camp, Camp Funston. Within that camp, thousands of horses, hogs, mules and chickens produced in excess of a stifling 9 tons of manure each month, and the accepted method for its disposal was to burn it, even against driving wind. State veterinarian W.J. Butler would report at the 28th meeting of the United States Livestock Sanitary Association, "I consider contaminated manure and stagnant water the most important factors in the spread and propagation of tuberculosis." Wang's recent JAMA study suggested that coronavirus may spread fastest on cruise ships and in hospitals where workers reuse gear contaminated with feces to try to conserve supplies. And so, on Saturday, the 9th of March 1918, a month which just happened to coincide with the annual peak surge for tuberculosis in Wuhan, China, a threatening black sky forecast the coming of a major dust storm. When this storm combined with the ashes of over 9 tons of burning manure, a stinking, stinging yellow haze resulted. The sun was said to have gone black in Kansas that day in 1918. 2 days later, on March the 11th, company cook Albert Gitchell reported to the Funston Infirmary saying he had a bad cold with flu-like symptoms. Among his symptoms were a headache, a sore throat, muscle aches, chills and fever. He also reported cleaning pig pens on March the 4th, 1 week before feeling sick. Gitchell would never recover from this, his last illness. And by noon of March the 4th, 100 men joined him at the army infirmary he had walked into. Within a month, 1,000 men were sick and approximately 50 dead. Camp Funston was having a deadly epidemic. These deaths were highly unusual, but nothing like what would return in the fall, when the disease would come back with a vengeance, seeming to gain strength through human passage. Camp Funston in March, Camp Devens in September, a month that coincides with the second annual TB surge in Wuhan, then across the country and the world, leaving an estimated 50 to 100 million dead globally, at least 600,000 to 1 million of them American, in the span of less than a year, the most destructive plague that mankind had ever witnessed. What are the implications of mistaking a mycobacterial disease for a viral disease? While an anxiety-filled world is losing sleep over a coronavirus that has resulted in the deaths of less than 2,000 people, a mycobacterium called tuberculosis is encircling the planet that is killing 1.7 million people a year, and is once again the single largest cause of infectious death on the globe. That does not even have to include morbidity or mortality, coming from its closely related Mycobacterium avium or fowl tuberculosis, for which, although there is treatment, we have yet to develop ideal drugs to treat. Moreover, the preferred form of both of these pathogens, once inside the body, is their tiny, hard to diagnose, viral-like, cell wall deficient mycobacterial forms, which require special stains and special culture media unavailable at most diagnostic centres. This leaves a situation in which Mycobacterium avium and its cell wall deficient forms, highly implicated here in the present pandemic, are being picked up, according to Mattman, only 16% of the time through traditional methods. If we are not looking or able to look diagnostically for the underlying Wuhan pathogen, then how can we treat it effectively? In 1933, researchers claimed they had first discovered the human influenza virus. So what was the flu virus of 1918? Historically, in 1892, the flu was originally named Mycobacterium influenza because it resembled tuberculosis. In the lab, both of these pathogenic organisms stain similarly on a lab slide. Staining is one method of identifying types of bacteria. Also, it was eventually found that Mycobacterium influenza and Mycobacterium tuberculosis have similar genetic profiles. What about reports of reinfection from coronavirus? Physicians on the ground in China report this COVID-19 coronavirus may produce a reinfection that is more lethal than the first. Yet tuberculosis is reported to have such a high rate of reinfection that even after triple antibiotic treatment, the reinfection rate is higher than the rate of new tuberculosis. Younger children appear to be immune. Yet perhaps one of the most puzzling features to virologists regarding the new coronavirus, as with SARS and MERS, is that compared with adults and teenagers, it seems to have a less aggressive clinical course in younger children. That is puzzling until one reads bacteriologist René Dubos's observation that tuberculosis is really severe between the age of 5 and 12, the very age span spared by the 2019 coronavirus. Also, that bats came to the forefront as a possible vehicle of the new novel coronavirus is no surprise. Already associated with the outbreak of SARS and MERS coronavirus, bats have been recognised as the natural reservoir for over 100 other viruses including MERS, Ebola, Marburg, Hendra, Nifar, to name but a few. But then again, according to 3 separate reports, bats can also carry mycobacteria from the M. tuberculosis complex and its viral-like cell wall deficient forms. Clear evidence of vitamin C. Most mammals internally secrete vitamin C from their liver and resist infection and death from TB. The mammals that don't secrete vitamin C endogenously are humans, guinea pigs, fruit bats, primate monkeys. They are vulnerable to TB and mortal pneumonia. Even Linus Pauling realised that TB was extraordinarily sensitive to killing by vitamin C. Guinea pig research led to the discovery of the tuberculosis bacterium, obviously because their liver doesn't secrete vitamin C and makes them prone to TB infections. We will use this deck because it's kind of, the traditional tarot is often, it has a real connection to the collective conscious, to the dense energies, if you like, of us as humans on the planet. So it's quite a good diagnostic tool in many ways, this tarot, as opposed to the other cards I was using, which were more oracle deck related. Now, the first question I was going to ask was, what are we looking at in terms of timing? And this was the first card that has jumped out, and here's the Knight of Pentacles. Well, Pentacles are the slowest of the timelines, and they talk about months of energy in this particular thing that we're looking at. So I do think that this is going to continue to go on for some time. We will see dips and peaks and rises, and sometimes the finance market might jump up again and the share market might jump up. But overall, this is with us for a little while, and we can see that as it has spread globally. But we have to remember the other potentialities we may have faced, which could have been far, far worse. And we also have to remember the learning that's coming from this, and the understanding and the changes that will be coming forward. Big events create big change. They also create big learning and big understanding. And change comes at every level, at the individual, at the collective, at the community, at the global, at the spiritual and physical. So yes, it's here for a little while. And he's got his armour on and his shield up. There's something in there about the sun, and that's a red sun. And I'm even pondering if that means to the next eclipses, which are June and July. We could see some balance coming around then. And of course, for a lot of you, for most of the world's population, that's your summer coming up. And we know that viruses really only take hold in winter time. So as you roll into your summer, things will begin to clear up there. And that's also when we may have found a vaccine, and when the trials of the vaccines may have ended and we can get them out to the general public. So the Queen of Rods popped out. She is a bit of an alchemist in her own way. She's often like the person who can make concoctions up. Yeah, I'm thinking a vaccine will come this year, which initially they said it wouldn't. It will be here, and it might be in one of the fire sign months, which is April and then August, around August time. So that's a possibility as well. I think April's too soon. It might be August. It could be December, November, December as well. What else do we want to say? What impact is it going to have on our... We kind of know already, but let's just look at the global finances. Well, people will be holding on to their money. So there is still money around, and that's another thing to understand. Yes, some people are going to lose money, and some people will be walking away from jobs, and this could be very disruptive and disheartening for a lot of people. And again, I see eclipses or new moons. Moons may be tied into this. A lot of people who have some money will hold tighter to it. So maybe not reinvest in the share market at this time if they've pulled out. It would be really nice if some people kept the share market going, because that in turn keeps companies going, which in turn keeps the world spinning. But there are people out there with money. They will hold on for a while until they feel it is time to come back in and show investment and open up. However, the biggest thing that we want to have happen is for small businesses to still be able to function. Let's have a look at small businesses. And I'm not looking at any necessary, country in particular. Well, the Lovers is often known as a business card, and it turned upside down, just kind of meaning that I think there is hardship around for business operators. They have to hold tight at this time. They maybe form a community or try and keep each other going to buoy each other up. Here in New Zealand, the government has given out a buoyancy pack for money for businesses. However, I feel some of the restrictions in them were a little bit limiting. Yeah, it just comes back to the hard work that you put in. Again, we're talking time. Some people may have a nest egg of money that they can call upon, either through savings or through some other method, or just through taking it slowly day by day. We're thinking most likely what we will see is local tourism for each country pick up a little bit. So instead of overseas visitors, as people become perhaps a little less fearful and anxious of the virus, they may decide to take internal travel within their own countries, and this in turn will stimulate a little bit of the economy again. And that's internal travel, just going for road trips, driving around, perhaps seeing your local sites, which to be honest, I've just done on the weekend, done a road trip around one part of New Zealand, which was very, very beautiful and thoroughly enjoyed it. So this may be more common, people taking to their cars to travel if they've got a little bit of time or money, rather than going overseas and exploring distant places overseas. The Four of Cups, that kind of makes you feel you're not that satisfied with that, but it might be the better option than nothing. So we're not seeing any of the, what I call real heavy stuff coming out. A lot of yellow in there. Yellow is about intellect and thinking. We've also seen quite a few pentacle cards come out. Some of them are about holding on to things and working really hard to bring balance back into the economy and not giving up, but being determined and persevering with things, and just it's all about digging deep. What's the overall outcome for the synopsis in this current timeline with the coronavirus globally for everyone? finances rebuilding, and we've said this will happen, and yes, it's going to take time, and yes, it's a pain, and yes, it's a loss, and yes, for some people it's going to be very difficult, and we just hope that somehow there's buoyancy for them, somehow they get looked after, somehow there are new ideas that pop forward. But it's new beginnings, it's starting all over again. And that's what it feels like. And these are also thoughts and ideas. These are government energies with the pentacles. This is firm, grounded, established protocol. This is taking your time to make decisions, walking the hard walk, going the distance, taking the time to reformat, restructure, put systems in place. And then slowly it builds up and builds up. But these are very honourable energies too. These are your earth energies, like your Taurus, Capricorn and Virgo, the hard workers of society that form the foundations and the pillars of societal systems, actually. They could be very new, they might be very different, but that bodes well. The card on the bottom, which I probably wished I hadn't turned over, was the Tower. But that's what's happening now. This is like a cleansing. This is like a rearranging. This is like a destructuring of the old to bring in the new. So there you are, everyone. This was a long one. I knew it would be. There was a lot to be said. There's a lot of information in here you may or may not agree with as well. Leave your comments, add your stories, add what you want to say. Feel free to do that as long as you are not insulting or hurting or putting up incorrect information. But yeah, thank you all for joining, and I wish you all the very best of immunity, of caring for yourself, of caring for others, and of bringing prosperity back to the planet with your positive thoughts and energies. So take care, be safe, be well, be happy. Namaste.